This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Calvin Watkins. I think before we move into our discussion about the Cowboys home opener against the Giants, that was a whiz-bang affair. A moment of silence for the passing of Robert Redford, one of the great actors of my youth, my misspent youth. He was in some great movies, I tell you. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. What a fun movie that was. He and Paul Newman really teamed up for that. And The Sting. Apparently, they were very good friends in real life, and that carried over into the chemistry on the film, which is so important, right? Anybody
chemistry.
Yeah. Anybody got their favorite Paul Newman movie? I'm not Paul Newman. Robert Redford movie.
Wait a minute. Where's the moment of silence? Because you haven't been silent yet.
I don't know. I'm not going to be silent. No, we're passing on that part of it. Just some recognition. Do you have a favorite Robert Redford movie?
I would probably say that All the President's Men for a journalist is probably up there. I also enjoyed. He was in The Sting with Paul Newman too, right?
Yeah, they're the two main guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I just recently saw Downhill Racer again. Have you ever seen that? Where he plays an Olympic skier. It's almost made like a documentary, and it's a terrific role. He plays a guy that's you don't really like very much, but it's really good. And the little bit I covered downhill racing in the Olympics, it was very surprisingly accurate, and I thought very good. That was a good one. 7 Days of the Condor, that was a great one. The Way We Were, if you like mushy stuff like that.
Really good. Who likes mushy stuff?
My wife, the lovely wife, loves mushy stuff. She was very upset to learn of Robert Redford's passing. I think she was holding out hope that, in case I were to kick the bucket, that he would be next. So should have seen the look on her face when I told her. That was sad. So anyway, here's to Robert Redford, one of the great ones. Certainly was that. All right, so Calvin, the Cowboys played in a wild and woolly affair on Sunday. I don't want to complain because Lord knows I hate to do that. But one of the things that they make me do now, or Tim already has to do it, but I had to do it too, is do the grades. And you got to hit the button on that thing right when the game's over, right? Well, The game was over like 6 times on Sunday. So I'm changing grades left and right. They're just flying all over the place. So anyway, Calvin, when's the last time you saw a Cowboys game that had several endings like that?
A couple of times, as one who had to do the 5 takeaways, which is something that we have to hit sand at the buzzer. So that's happened a couple of times during my time on the beat. But that game, I really thought, the Cowboys are good. And then Robinson makes a sliding catch in the end zone. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to lose to the Giants, and we're going to have to burn the building down. So they're going to lose to the Giants, and because I had this sappy story to write about Shotty gets his first win and his dad, all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to just destroy these people, and somehow they have the great kicker, Brandon Aubrey, and everything is all good, and they win in overtime. So I was very shocked by that ending, very, very shocked.
I think the key takeaway from all this is both of you are a little bit rusty on the practice of running, what we call running in the business.
Running.
Yes, running. My running is off right now. My running
is meant for people who don't understand what that is. All sports writers, basically in games, especially games on deadline, you do running, in which you just write about the things that have happened up to that point, and then you get to at the end of it, you put a little thing at the top. But when you're having to do things like the grades, that's 5 different grades, and it's a fluid thing here. If they win this game, they get 1 grade. If they lose this game, they get another grade. So that's where it gets a little.
I'm sorry things were so hard for you.
I know. Well, what's life if you can't complain about it?
Football game that started at 12 noon, and we were on a tight deadline.
Exactly.
That was the issue.
That shows you what the newspaper business has come to. Yeah.
Well, no, let's come on. Let's have a better approach here. That's why we want you to have readers immediacy. We want immediate opinions. It does not matter if we're right or wrong or we've reported it, so long as you have it immediately.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. All right, Evan, Calvin, give us a quick update here on the injury situation before we jump into all this.
All right, let's start at the top. Starting center Cooper Beebe, he is out 6 to 8 weeks with a sprained right ankle. I saw him in the locker room after that Giants game, and he was on crutches, and an ankle looked like a basketball. So I figured we won't see him for a while. So Cooper's out. Brock Hoffman will replace him in week 3 when we go to Chicago. Javonte Turpin, he injured his neck, and when I saw him in the locker room Monday, I said, "Hey, how's your neck?" He said, "My neck is fine. It's my trapezius. I can't pronounce that word. My trapezius is a little jacked up. I can't have contact for a week, but I'm hoping to play against Chicago." Brian Schottenheimer said that he hopes his lead return guy will be okay and will be able to play. So we'll see. Miles Sanders and Jalen Tolbert replaced Turpin on kick returns and punt returns in the Giants game when he went out. Deron Bland, the starting cornerback who missed last week's game with a sprained foot, he most likely won't play against Chicago. Maybe we'll get him back for Green Bay. And other than that, the Cowboys are pretty healthy. And they signed Jadeveon Clowney yesterday, so he's going to help matters for the Cowboys.
And Calvin, how are you feeling?
My throat's a little scratchy, maybe because I was sitting next to Sherrington and he was doing the running. So I think I'm a little under the weather.
Yeah, that could have been it. That could have been it too. All right, so let's look at this situation here. I think Evan has a question to ask. Do you not, Evan?
Well, I do. I didn't realize that I would get to ask it so quickly. I'm so honored.
I'm just trying to get you going here, Evan. Okay? Holy cow!
You guys were both at the game. Obviously, the Rangers were a little bit involved in New York, and I didn't get a chance to watch the game as the Rangers were playing. And listen, just from everything that took place, it was a wild and crazy game. And I don't know. I think every game has to have a verdict. So what is the biggest takeaway you guys both have from whatever the Cowboys accomplished or didn't in the win over the Giants?
Calvin, you go first.
The biggest accomplishment is that you won the game, right? And that's the bottom line. No matter how ugly a game is, you want to win it. And they won the ball game. As I was telling our editor, Damon Marks, they won the battle, but I think they're losing the war because the pass rush, they still have problems. They gave up 7 plays of 20 or more yards to 52-year-old Russell Wilson, who's a quarterback for the Giants. The offense, I think, is fantastic. They can put up the points. That's not an issue for the Cowboys. The problem is, can he stop anybody? And Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator, he plays a basic zone defense. We're going to rush 4 guys and drop everybody else back. And it seems as if they're having problems in the back end of the secondary in containing guys, particularly fast receivers, which is what we saw against the Giants in week 2. So while they did win that game and I was happy for them and all that kind of stuff, I was a little concerned that when they play against better teams, they're going to exploit the Cowboys defense. And if you have a good defense, you might be able to stop the Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I thought the thing that through 2 games that really strikes me about the Cowboys is one, and Dak talked about this after the game, that he really wasn't running last year. They wanted to protect that $60 million investment in him, and he'd gotten hurt before while he was running. So it's like let's just keep him in the pocket. Well, in my mind, if Dak's not going to run, well, then he's not worth $30 million a year. He's got to move, and most quarterbacks do, right? There's not anybody left in the NFL like Tom Brady or any of that. Joe Burrow maybe a little bit, but most all of them move, and I think that he looks as good. Well, I mean, it was just a couple of years ago that he had a good year, so it's not really that unusual. But he looks really good on the field. He looks confident. He's moving well. He's getting himself out of bad situations, which he's going to have to do because this line's not pass blocking very well. So I think that is a huge upside. I think George Pickens is a huge upside. I think that he makes a real difference in that offense. They look dangerous passing the ball like they did when they had Amari Cooper to go with CeeDee Lamb. So I think that, and he's probably a little better than Amari was at that point. Certainly more dynamic than Amari, I'll say that. And then Javonte Williams, I'm shocked we didn't get to see him at all, right? And you just saw him in practice basically in the preseason, and that was it. And he looks exactly like the kind of running back they need. The downhill runner, got a little gas. He's a little bit, he's fast enough anyway. And so those are all good things, but it's just, as you said, on the defense, it's a mess. Now, look, Malik Neighbors is a problem for anybody, but they made Wan'Dale Robinson look great. They made Darius, Slayton look great. But, those three guys combined for 370 yards worth of catches. That's unbelievable. 370 yards spread among three guys. I mean, they just ran all over the Cowboys. No one could catch anybody. I think Trayvon Diggs clearly is still struggling a little bit coming back from his injury. And I think there are some miscommunications back there and all of that. But look, let's just get right down to it. For all the people, and I still hear from people who say that, Micah Parsons wasn't worth that kind of money. And look, he'd have to get 18 or 20 sacks to be worth that kind of money and all that kind of stuff. All you have to know is that when Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland were back there in the last couple of years, they knew that quarterback is speeding up his clock, right? This is going to be, I got to get they know I don't have to cover this guy forever, and I can be aggressive here because Micah is going to get to him at some point. It's not just the sacks, it's the quarterback hits, it's the pressures, it's all the things that he brings. We see all these numbers and analytics now and what the difference he has made for the Packers defense. And they already had a good defense, but it's even better now because of what he brings. That's what Micah Parsons does. He makes everybody better on the defense because of what he does and what he brings to the table. And for everybody who complains and says that's what the quarterback is supposed to do, here's a guy on defense who's doing that from his position because he is so good, and still people don't appreciate that. So, I don't. Jadeveon Clowney on his best day is not Micah Parsons. He's been a good player. He was never the player he was supposed to be when he came out of college, but he's been a good player, and he'll help. But that won't make up for what Micah Parsons was.
No, he was Micah Parsons in college when Micah Parsons was Micah Parsons in college.
Yeah,
not since.
What was that one play, right, in college? Who was that he blew up and the running back and pushed him back into the quarterback? Was that LSU who they were playing? I can't remember.
I can't even remember, but it was one of those kind of visuals that was just stayed indelible in your mind, right? That you always
absolutely.
Recall. I thought there was an instance too where he jumped over a lineman. I think I know the answer to this, but it sounds like Dak and his mobility, Kevin, which you and I have been very strong advocates for the last couple of years, are a nice surprise. The lack of a pass rush and the lack of a defense at this point is no surprise. And which is the bigger story?
It's interesting you say that because Mike McCarthy was on a podcast recently, and he said
because America is now it's just podcasts. There's a guy who's working on 2 different podcasts this week.
Yeah, true.
Yes. McCarthy said last year they did not want Dak to run as much, right? They were trying to protect him in some areas, right? So, and then Dak obviously tears his hamstring, the tendon off the hamstring bone. So So now you figure, well, dang, maybe he shouldn't be running as much. But well, he is. And in training camp, they have this drill where after they stretch, all the players run over these tackling dummies. They told Dak, we don't want you to do that because we don't want you to get hurt. We want to preserve you for the season. So now I think the game was clinched when Dak scrambled up the middle and in the overtime, and that's how they kind of won that game really. When you boil it down, and Dak is using his legs more because he is healthier. And in the NFL, you need a quarterback that can move around. The Cowboys have problems sacking Jalen Hurts because he can move around. Then the Cowboys had problems stopping Russell Wilson because he threw the ball down the field and their secondary was terrible. So the quarterback, they got problems stopping quarterbacks who can move around and quarterbacks who can throw the ball down the field, right? And now they have their own quarterback who's off to a fantastic start who can move around a little bit more than what he used to. So they have it's a weird team, to be honest with you, to cover because I'm not sure what to see week to week.
I think that to your point, Evan, I do think that you do have to be able to score in this league. That has kind of been the Cowboys' MO for the last 4 or 5 years, right? Is that they're just going to try to outscore people. They're not going to have a great defense. They'll have a good enough defense, but they're going to try to outscore everybody. I think that I'm willing to see if Matt Eberflus could. If his scheme will finally start to kind of register with everybody as they try to get, going here, that Trayvon Diggs will get better when Deron Bland comes back. That will certainly help. And then eventually when DeMarvion Overshown gets here, that should really help because of he's a very dynamic player. And the more that you get out there, the better. That's the thing about the two linebackers, Jack Sanborn and Kenneth Murray. They rack up a lot of tackles. They're tough guys, but they can't cover anybody. And so that's an issue, back there. If their linebackers are not carrying the receivers back to the secondary, well, then that's, then you got problems. And that's one of the things that happened in that game on Sunday. So I think you can look forward to a lot of high scoring games with the Cowboys this year. There's not going to be many 21-17 kind of games, and if they're going to do anything, they're going to have to do that. I will say this: there was some talk that maybe they wouldn't be as good as the Giants, and the Giants are terrible.
Who said that?
Yeah. I heard people say that. The Giants are terrible, and the Cowboys barely beat them. And I think that's the issue. To Calvin's point, it's what everybody says, and somebody said that to me on Twitter. You never apologize for a win in the NFL. Well, yeah, you can. That's that game right there. The Giants had 140 yards worth of penalties. Was 100 or was it 160? 160 yards worth of penalties, and 7 flags got picked up. 7 flags got picked up. They could have had over 200 yards of penalties in that game. It was an embarrassment to watch them play. They are so bad, and yet the Cowboys barely beat them in overtime.
The starting left tackle had 4 penalties in the first possession of the game and got benched.
Yes, 4 penalties on the first possession. 2 of them, personal foul penalties. That swing at James Houston's head. That was an all-timer. The guy's going down and you're swinging at his head. I mean, it just looked like the rumble in the jungle, didn't it, Calvin? I mean, golly, that was I've bad.
Never seen. And the funny thing is, they benched him, and then he got mad at the coaches for benching him.
Yeah, like he should have been out there. Go ahead, Evan.
I will say this: that all of that is all true, and from a on the field perspective. Just looking at how that game took place, I was like, yeah, this is not going to be what you would call a real decisive victory. But I do think the counter on all of that is you had to get Schottenheimer his first win somehow. And however you got it, that's important. Just getting him to a point where he's an NFL coach that has a win under his belt, I think was important. And that, I think ultimately that's, to Calvin's point, for me, that's probably the biggest takeaway is, hey, you've got to win. Now you got to go do something with it, which brings us to this. Is there any way – you talk about terrible teams. Is there any possible way that they lose at the Bears?
If Dak doesn't make the game, then maybe they could still beat the Bears. But the Bears are pretty bad.
Yeah,
And
I didn't buy them. This whole Bears thing. People, they were a popular choice, in the NFC North. It's like, come on, the Bears were terrible last year. I know that Ben Johnson's coaching them now, but do we really think he was going to make that much difference? Yeah, I mean, if they lose to the Bears, that would be awful. I don't. I put the Bears in pretty much the same category. They're better than the Giants, but I wouldn't say a lot better. And they just got smoked by the Lions.
If Caleb Williams shreds them.
Well, that's an issue, and that's not, Caleb Williams is still trying to find himself. I got to tell you, I'm surprised as anybody that he has not been any better than he has in the pros. He's got issues, with just kind of standing in the pocket and making a play instead of just, retreating 50 yards and then trying to heave something downfield. Although Cam Ward got away with that the other day, right? That throw across his body to the left side of the end zone. That is like the worst possible thing you can do as a quarterback is to make a throw like that, and he got away with it for a touchdown.
I've seen Brett Favre try to make that throw, and it's gotten picked off. And then I saw Arch Manning try to do it, I think, last week. So they all try to do it. Why? I don't know. I don't know what they're seeing out there. But you're taught not to make that throw, and they still try to make that throw.
Florida's quarterback, I don't know. Florida's quarterback tried to do that in the LSU game when they had one last chance on Saturday night, and it did not go well either.
DJ Lagway, 5 picks in that game. 5. I think his Heisman campaign is over. Of course, Arch Manning's is as well. But anyway, we digress. So let me ask you this, Calvin. So at this point, well, let me ask you this about the running back situation, because I brought that up about Javonte Williams. So Jaden Blue, second week in a row, healthy scratch. Not good.
I don't think Jaden Blue is totally healthy.
Really?
Yeah, he had an ankle issue. I think he's healthy enough to play, right? Uh-huh. But I don't think he's as good as Miles Sanders and Williams right now. And I'm surprised at how well the running game is going. I really am. I saw Williams; he's jumping over defenders in that game.
Yeah,
like Zeke out there. So I'm very shocked about that. Sanders rebounded after fumbling against the Eagles. He got a touchdown. So the running game is a lot better, and the offensive line had a really good game on Sunday against the Giants. So Blue just can't get on the field right now. And I don't think he's 100% healthy, but like I said, he's healthy enough to play. And when I saw him in training camp, I was like, okay, he's okay. I mean, and as Mr. Sherrington keeps pointing out, this man did not start in college. So why do you seem like he's Earl Campbell here? So, he's a mid-round pick. He's not like he's a first-round pick, and we can't get this man on the field. I mean, it's what it is, right? They got 2 veterans who are just better than him right now.
But he went to Texas, so that canceled all that out.
Well, he did catch 2 touchdown passes in the semifinal. He's good at catching the ball. He's just not good at holding on to the ball. That was always the big issue in college, is that he just fumbled all the time. You can't do that. And it's just that people really, that's how hungry this town is for a running back, right? That people were desperate to think that either Jaden Blue or Phil Maffa were going to do something, and Javonte Williams has answered that bell. I'm pleasantly surprised by that. I did not see it. Of course, we didn't even see him. How do we know what he is? The Broncos gave up on him, right?
Yeah, they did. They gave up on old Javonte, but he was okay in training camp. It wasn't like he was looking like Gale Sayers in training camp. He was okay, And at one point, I thought Miles Sanders was looking better than him, and then Miles Sanders got hurt. Yeah. And I was like, oh, man, they're in real trouble now. But then Javonte's played pretty well. So we'll find out when they play Green Bay in 2 weeks what this is all about.
Kevin, remember we were high on what Deuce Vaughn was going to bring to the offense?
Told me put on a poor old Deuce Vaughn. That one didn't work out. That's another guy I thought might be able to do something. I'm a big fan of those.
I was making that up. I remember you were all fired up about Deuce Vaughn.
I like those. The great thing about a short running back is that they've already got a low center of gravity, just naturally. That's what you want in most running backs. Unless you're Eric Dickerson, there's not very many. Derrick Henry's that same thing. 6 foot plus running back standing up there taking a lot of shots. I mean, Derrick Henry is just unbelievable that he's still as good now as he's ever was. And for that size and taking as many shots as he has, that is remarkable. That's been a remarkable career.
Imagine if the Cowboys had signed.
Imagine that. Imagine if they had drafted him. Like did I ever tell you all that I said that the Cowboys should draft him in the second round back in 2016? Did I bring that up?
No, we don't have time for that, Kevin. So let's just
maybe
stop.
maybe about 5 times I've said that. But when I write, I'm not writing very often, so when I am, I like to bring it up. All right, that's going to do it for the Cowboys segment of our podcast. We thank Calvin for coming and sitting in with us, and we will bid Calvin adieu now. Thanks, Calvin.
Thanks, guys.
Calvin, goodbye. Bye-bye, Calvin.
Goodbye, Evan.
All right, Evan, you cover the I don't want to make light of a mental health situation here, but this team is all over the map. The Rangers. They sweep the Brewers. They win 2 out of 3 against the Mets. And that game on Sunday was a little bit sloppy and probably not a bad sign. And boy, they carried that right over into the game Monday in Houston at Dakin Park. That was not a good game. Let's just start with this before we get into the specifics of that game. And they got 2 left as we were taping this. What's your feeling about the Rangers right now? I mean, the arrow was pointing up just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, and Kevin, listen, if you, as we tape this, right, and they lost 1 game at the Mets, and they have lost 1 game at the Astros. If they come back and win the last 2, and they've got Jacob deGrom going on Wednesday, the mission accomplished. I still don't know if just accomplishing a mission is good enough at this point, but if they win these last 2, they come out of Houston a game back of the Astros with 9 to play, which is certainly manageable. But to your point, as I said to a scout who was there last night, I said, listen, it would not be out of the realm of possibility for the Rangers to come in here, win this series, sweep the Marlins, take control of the wild card going into the last week of the season, and then get everybody back and lose it. Nothing makes sense that takes place on the field with the Rangers these days, and including I thought last night, there were some errors, and the middle of the lineup didn't produce, including Adolis Garcia, who's 0 for 8 since returning to the lineup. But I thought that there were a number of decisions all across the board yesterday or Monday that were impactful. From roster decisions, which are, they didn't bring an extra pitcher in, and so they were short in the bullpen with Chris Martin unavailable and 3 guys down after pitching on back-to-back days. From lineup decisions, that they didn't start Michael Hellman for the 2nd straight day, and this is a team that is, whether Michael Hellman is just on a heater or whether it's coincidental, whatever, they're 13-2 since he's come back up. To managerial decisions. Bruce Bochy ran for Rowdy Tellez as a potential go-ahead run, but he didn't run for Jonah Heim as the tying run in the 7th inning. And then Tony Beasley, to his credit, took accountability for his decision, which was a poor one, to send Heim on a line drive single to left field that he was thrown out at home plate by so much that Yainer Diaz kind of had to just wait to apply the tag. So I think my takeaway from all that is this is a team that has to have everything go right for it to make up the ground it needed to make up ground. And when one thing doesn't go right, it tends to implode on this team. And that's what we saw happen on Monday.
Yeah, and that was a great point you made in your story today, especially in left field in Houston. That's a short left field. So on the, you're watching Jonah Heim, who is slower than slow, and he's got his head down and going to third.
But faster than Tellez, according to sprint speed stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have great decisions.
Yeah, but that's the thing. With two outs, you know, it's the tying run that you got to have, right? You know, you can worry about the go ahead run all you want to. You got to have it, and then of course, as Bruce Bochy said after the game, I don't know that anybody would score on that play. You know,
no.
and probably not. So just Tony's decision to say, you know, and look, we can criticize the third base coaches all the time because, you know, there's 1,000 plays, and I don't even know what the best percentage is for sending a guy. You know, or as a third base coach, are you batting 90%? Are you batting 80%? I don't know. But on a play like that, and I prefer people to be aggressive, but I want you to be aggressive with guys who are who have the capability to carry this. If that's Wyatt Langford on second, then maybe I say, okay, go ahead and send him on this play, and maybe we'll hope for a bad throw.
Well, I think there's two things, and look, Tony addressed this. You know, he's looking at a situation. Jock Peterson is on deck with a left-handed pitcher on the mound, and he knows what Jock's success is against lefties and how little he's faced lefties. And he saw Jock strike out really feebly against the lefty. So that's one situation. He didn't know that Bruce Bochy was planning to pinch hit Kyle Higashioka for Jock in that situation. So that's one of those things that they just weren't on the same wavelength there. And you know, the scouting report on Sanchez, he said, was that this guy had inconsistency in terms of being accurate with his throws. But he also, when I said, what did you think? I said, Tony, I don't know if this is a fair question, but when you see that he comes up cleanly with the ball after you've sent Heim, what runs through your mind? And Beasley just said, Lord help me.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. Well, there wasn't, and let's not just put it all at his feet. And as you said, there were multiple things that happened here, and I don't want to dump too much on Jack Leiter, but he must be one of the worst fielding pitchers in baseball because.
Well, you know, and this, I didn't get too much into this morning, and Sean wrote about Jack, and I thought, you know, Sean made some good points because this is a tough situation for the Rangers to be in right now. But for Jack to get big starts against a big rival and pitch into the seventh inning in the playoffs in a playoff run in September is important. But two things I want to point out, right? That he did slip. He just shouldn't have thrown that ball to first base, but because he was slipping as he got the ball. And in the same first inning, Yordan Alvarez slipped on home plate as he got across the bag. And I'm not so sure that the field hadn't been watered down a little bit too much prior to the game, which led to some issues. But no, Jack should not have thrown that ball. He just should not have thrown the ball.
Because he had a ball in his last start on the ball in the back, he goes back behind the mound, tries to pick it up. He's looking up instead of just picking the ball up and throw to first. You know, you can just see it in him because we know that about him, right? We know that boy, there are 1,000 thoughts going through his head all the time, and his adrenaline, his blood pressure, all of that we know is just he's trying to mask it as best he can. But you know that his heart rate is about 150 out there, and he has got to learn to slow that down and just make plays. Because I know he slipped on that one. And of course, on that play you're talking about where Alvarez scored, of course, Adolis, I guess, thinking that, not noticing that Alvarez had run through a stop sign, just flips the ball to first base instead of throwing home because he's going to nail Alvarez if he throws home. And so there was that as well. So there was just a lot of things that didn't go well. And I'm sure that Bruce Bochy thinks that, look, Adolis just kills the Astros, right? And this is why you got to play against the Astros.
But this I really do want to talk to Boch about when I go to the ballpark on today being Tuesday is, look, I mean, this is what the Rangers are presented with, is the ultimate, like, you know, do you play the hot hand or do you go with guys who you believe in, have a track record? And you know, right now they have leaned towards a guy who has a track record. Now, Adolis Garcia could go out and destroy the Astros on Tuesday and Wednesday, and it looks brilliant. Or if the Rangers lose, then it's going to be second guessed a million times. So,
Yeah, no question about that. Well, and I
Hey,
got to tell you, it's frustrating watching because Adolis gets up and is the last at bat and takes the first pitch, a 92-mile-an-hour fastball right over the center of the plate, and then it's just predictable. The very next pitch, 6 inches out of the strike zone, over the top, he wails away at it, and of course misses, and now he's down 0-2, and then
yeah.
then it's impossible for him at that point. It's just
Which does bring up as something else that the stunt squad or the Little Rascals or the All American Rejects or the Hungry Hippos, whatever the hell you want to call them, they have great. I think the Hellman. When I looked this up on going into Sunday, Hellman, Cody Freeman, and Dylan Moore were hitting like 240 with 2 strikes since coming up with the Rangers, and the rest of the team was hitting 140, and they've got great 2-strike approaches, and the guys in the middle of the lineup do not. The guys in the middle of the lineup went 0 for 12 in Houston on Monday night. With Berger had 3 strikeouts, Garcia had a strikeout, and Jock had at least 1 strikeout. So I mean, it just was not a good performance by the middle of the lineup. And Jake Berger did not have his best game in the field. He had a ball that he could have picked at first base for an inning-ending double play that didn't get picked, and the Astros ended up scoring 2 more runs in that inning with 2 outs.
Yeah. Yeah, just a combination. What it just felt like, Evan, watching it, it just felt like we can't beat these guys. There was a sense of resignation in it, in the way that they were playing. When you make that many mistakes, it just felt like that. And I think at this point, it's a reasonable question to ask. Wouldn't you rather have the guy? Let's play out this situation with the guys, right? We always know that about you don't lose your position because of injury, right? That's an old thing in sports. I don't believe in that. If a guy is playing really well and you're on a roll here, and the guy that's going to come back, it's not Corey Seager, it's not an automatic that you're going to do this. I'm going to stick with the hot hand here. Let's just play this out. And that feels to me like a Bruce Bochy kind of thing, that he sticks with the hot hand instead of making that decision. Okay, well, we'll go back to Adolis, who's in the midst of a really bad year.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next couple of days with those guys. But there is something to be said that whether they're certainly not as talented as the Garcias and the Simeons and all of that group, but they've got the right approach right now, which is tough at bats, 2-strike approaches, and making contact. And those things need to happen. On Sunday in New York, the Rangers had 3 situations with a runner on third base and less than 2 outs. Josh Young had a terrible at bat for a double play. Josh Smith swung at a pitch in off the plate for a double play. And Adolis Garcia struck out. And so those are 3 guys who have some experience up here. And I do have confidence that if one of those little rascals had come to the plate, they would have put the ball in play in a better way.
Yeah, it is just as simple as that. The difference between a strikeout and putting a ball in play is that, even if it's not a hit, that might move somebody over, it might score them, and there's always a chance, obviously, that someone makes an error on the play. But when you're striking out, you get enough of those, you get enough guys like that, and you and I have talked about this before in this lineup. There are too many guys like that. They're all or nothing. They're all swinging from their heels, and that's a bad approach. And I've had that discussion with Chris Young. He disagrees with me. He thinks that there are guys in that lineup who are different, and I don't see it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just my eye test is that no, these guys are all too much alike, and they're going to have to change that going into next season. So, Evan, before we wrap this up with the Rangers, it's almost impossible to make projections on this team. And I've already said that at least they've made September relevant, right?
Yes.
And where everything was in July, to think that they would be this close now, you would have said, oh my gosh, I can't believe it that they're going to do that. So, I think everybody believes in the Mariners and the Astros more than they do the Rangers. I've said this on a number of occasions. I think the Astros, to me, are like I don't get it. I don't understand why they have, of course, they're right there with the Mariners now. I think the Mariners are a much better team than the Astros. I don't understand how they continue to win games.
Yeah, I mean, I that is kind of a mystery to me. But we talk about, right? We're talking about this, Kevin, and all things considered, the Rangers are what as we speak. They're 3 back of the Astros. Is that what they are?
Yeah, 3 back.
Yeah, they're 3 back of the Astros, and we don't. And we're talking about the Astros being huge overachievers with what they've had, and the Rangers being huge underachievers, and yet there's 3 games to separating them, and by the end of this series, it's possible that it could be 1. And so I think what it just says is that there's very few teams in baseball that look like they don't have flaws. Philadelphia looks very, very good to me. I was not that impressed with Milwaukee against the Rangers, but Philadelphia looks very, very good to me. And the way the Mariners are playing right now, it's hard for me to believe in the Mariners just because of their history. But the way they're playing right now, it seems like they have gathered themselves and weathered the storm. They've got great pitching, and now getting Robles back into the lineup. The lineup seems to be pounding out some runs. So they're a pretty dangerous team as the playoffs approach.
Yeah, they are. And I'll just say one last thing about it, to my point about the Astros. They lost Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker over the offseason. If that had happened in this market, we would have fried the Rangers for letting 2 players with that kind of impact. Those are 2. I mean, Bregman's he's a little long in the tooth at this point, but those are 2 guys who could be in the discussion for MVP, year in and year out, and to let 2 of them go, and they're still winning. It is unbelievable. They have and they do a good job with their pitching. But I think that was the thing for me this year, is that the Rangers pitching has been so much better than what it has been in the past that I would take that. I think the Astros have a better bullpen, but I'd still take the Rangers rotation and put them up against the Houston's any day. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. We'll move over now and talk about colleges. The Aggies had a big win over Notre Dame in South Bend. That game was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of crazy things happened in that. Certainly not a pristine performance by the Aggies. Marcel Reed, he's fun to watch. He is not real accurate. He will make some bad throws occasionally, but then all of a sudden he makes a terrific throw. And those 2 receivers he has, Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, they're terrific. Boy, I love to watch them. They got their hands up. They point the ball up. They know what they're doing. They're fast. They make big plays. They're very dynamic. That's the best set of receivers in the state, I think, and maybe in America. They're really good. So the Aggies have got an offense now, and their defense is still a little questionable. They still give up too much, and I'm sure that drives Mike Elko crazy, being a defensive guy. But that was a statement win. It reminded me a little bit because I was in Tuscaloosa when Johnny Football beat Alabama in 2012. Now, this win did not rise to that level. That was an unbelievable win. That's one of the top 10 wins of all time for the Aggies. In that game,
10 all time.
Oh, absolutely. To go in there and do that, and to beat number 1 Alabama in Tuscaloosa, people were thinking, all right, how good are they really? Well, they showed up people how good they were. And that sent a message. This game, that beat Notre Dame, I mean, they'd already lost once to Miami, but beating them at home, that's a good team. That's a team that made the national championship game last year. They're good. I'm not a big believer in DJ Carr, but they're still a good team. And to win on the road like that, I think that was really impressive. So they sent a message, and you and I have talked about this as well. Who's going to win the SEC? I mean, is there any team that just looks invincible to you? I mean, people still believe in LSU, and I'm not sure I do. You know,
Let,
I think
let me just
LSU is good.
let me just say this about that, and I'll just leave it with this on LSU. I got back from the Rangers Mets game on Saturday about 9:30 p.m. and figured I'd watch the rest of LSU Florida because we had a day game the next day. I turned on the TV, and no less than 5 minutes in, Brian Kelly was absolutely berating. I mean, just berating Garrett Nussmeier. And he had made a really bad pass. But my point in all this is I don't believe in Brian Kelly as a coach to do the things necessary to get the most out of a team. I think he's more concerned about yelling and screaming at people than he is about getting the most out of each of his players. So I don't believe in LSU. That's my point. And they didn't look good against Florida. Quite frankly, they didn't. It was a big win for Georgia to get that win at Tennessee that they shouldn't have gotten. Um,
Yeah,
my
I can't believe that they came back and won that game. I thought
my
that Tennessee just looked like they were going to roast them.
Well, Tennessee came out, played really good. Again, this is one of the things I love about Kirby Smart is he makes really good adjustments, and Georgia did make adjustments. Um, but Tennessee should have won that game, and my thanks to Josh Heupel for running an extra play instead of just sneaking it in the middle of the field. They tried to run an actual running play and got caught for an illegal procedure, pushed them back 5 yards, and they missed a game-winning field goal as time expired. But yeah, I think until you unseat Georgia, you're gonna have to look at the Bulldogs as a team to beat in the SEC. I don't know what to make of the whole Arch Manning thing. I'm interested in what your take is here. Like, how bad does it look?
Oh, it looks bad. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It looks bad, I'm shocked because look, everybody knew that the hype was unbelievable and it was too much. I felt like that all the Texas needed from Arch Manning was for him to become a bus driver with a little more. That they should have enough people there. They got a really good defense, and so and I wrote this the other day in my newsletter. What they need for Arch Manning at this point is like a Colin Klein, what Colin Klein does for Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. Run the ball a little bit. We're going to dump some passes here. Then we'll take a couple of shots downfield, but we're going to be pretty conservative for the most part and let this kid do some things to build his confidence. And, but there's been discussions about whether he's hurt, whether his shoulder hurts, whatever. He's just not seeing things. There are plays where guys are running wide open and he's not seeing them. And it's not a question even of being under duress in those situations. He's not seeing them. I saw a tweet the other day from Clarence Hill, a noted Texas supporter, and he had talked to a former NFL quarterback. I'm guessing that might have been one of the Cowboys, who said he was, quote, mortified by what he saw of Arch Manning in that game against UTEP. I'm not writing him off by any means. Look, there's too much talent there, and if he just hits a few of these passes, he's so big. You run him, you get from him what you couldn't get from Quinn Ewers, and they can still be good. But part of the problem for them is they don't have dynamic receivers this year. They don't have a dynamic running game. They can't keep C.J. Baxter on the field. And Steve Sarkisian, as we all know, he's an offensive coordinator, and they got egos, and he wants to show everybody how smart he is, and look at all the things that I can do here, and he can't do that if he's going to dial down the offense. So
yeah, that's been my biggest problem with this from the start, and this goes back to last year too. I feel like too often Steve Sarkisian is trying to show off his offense instead of win the game. And in the case of Arch, we've talked about this since the Ohio State game. I did not think that the game plan was set up to have success. It was set up to try and show off Arch Manning, which I think was a critical mistake.
Yeah, as I said, he's got another week here against Sam Houston. They play on Saturday at home, so that's another week to try to get everything ready. And then you go to Florida, and that can be a tough place to play, obviously. But my gosh, they're awful. I mean, I thought DJ Lagway going into the season, he'd be a difference maker, right? And then he throws 5 interceptions in one game. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So I think really that's the thing for Texas. Now, we'll see as their schedule develops. But obviously the Georgia game is going to be pivotal for them, and that's in Athens, and so that'll be a very, very tough game for them. But the way they're playing right now, they may not make it through the SEC schedule. They may not make it to the playoffs. I don't know. I don't know if they're one of the 12 best teams in the country right now. I don't think so. I mean, in my best in Texas rankings, I put them second behind A&M, and I asked the question: is this still too high? I mean, I don't know about what Texas Tech is. I don't know what TCU is. I still don't know what SMU is. We got the Iron Skillet this Saturday. I'll be over in Fort Worth for that game. And we'll see how good TCU is, whether they have, put some things together. And Sonny Dykes has said that he thinks that this is his most talented team, maybe more talented than the team that went to the national championship game. So we'll see if that's the case. SMU's really in a position now where they got to win out. And this is going to still be difficult for them this year in the ACC, although, Clemson's already lost. So I don't know, how that race is going to shape up as well. So there's just a lot of parity in college football these days. I think what we're seeing is, and we saw that last year is that the portal has made everybody equal, right? I mean, quarterbacks leave. It's like in Oklahoma, John Machir, transfers, and all of a sudden the Sooners look like a different team now with him at quarterback. He's a little bit, kind of reminds you a little bit of Baker Mayfield, kind of got some of the same stuff. And that makes a big difference when you've got a quarterback who can make plays with his feet and also can, throw some off schedule stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the ACC right now, I look at Miami, I look at Florida State, and I look at Georgia Tech. That was a big win for them over Clemson, and the A&M transfer Haynes King has really played well there. So I do think SMU's got a real uphill battle in the ACC. I still think when it comes down to the SEC, if it's me on September 16th or whatever today is, I think the two teams that are going to be standing are going to be the winner of the A&M Texas game and Georgia.
Yeah, I think so too. And of course, that A&M Texas game is in Austin the day after Thanksgiving. Right now, I'd have to go with the Aggies on that because I think they're just playing better. And that's the thing that I don't know that they're really playing great. They beat Notre Dame and they didn't play all that well. They still make a lot of mistakes.
They went to Notre Dame and scored 41 points.
That's something.
They made some big plays and some big throws. They made a big play on fourth down to win that game. So
yeah.
And Texas went to Ohio State and scored 7 points. So I mean, on that level alone, they've both played big games on the road against playoff contending teams. A&M won, Texas didn't.
Yeah, there's no question about that. So right now, the A&M's got the upper hand on them, and we'll see what Texas does. I just, I think that if you've got a good defense, like Texas has a good defense, I think that'll keep you in games, and they just need to figure out what it is that Arch does best and just helping with that. But I will say this. It answers all the questions of those people who said last year, well, why doesn't he play, Arch instead of Quinn Ewers? Well, I think we're seeing that now. I mean, I never thought that for 1 minute that Arch Manning should be playing instead of Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers had won you way too many games. He's your veteran quarterback. He really hadn't done anything to lose that. The loss to Ohio State in the semifinals last year was a typical Quinn Ewers kind of game. He wins you a lot of games, but at some point he's going to do something in a big game where not necessarily it causes you to lose the game. He can't make the play that causes you to win the game. And that was
the fascination of the quarterback that's not playing is one that always really just always gets.
Well, because here's the thing too, as I started to say earlier, I was there when he beat Mississippi State, last year, and of course that was Mississippi State, and they're terrible, but he looked terrific in that game. There wasn't anything. He doesn't look anything like that quarterback now. He looks like a guy that, as I said about Jack Leiter earlier, about his nerves and his heartbeat and all the rest of it, that's what he looks like. He's Jack Leiter in a football uniform right now. And that's what he's got to learn just to to calm down, slow that heartbeat a little bit, and just kind of look around and see what he's supposed to see. He's had great coaching his whole life, and there's no reason for that not to be the case. I know that there are some pro scouts who have said all along they weren't sold on him, but I don't want to say that after 3 games, all right, this is who this guy is. I don't think that's the case.
No. I mean, I'm not. There's no time for verdicts on Arch Manning at this point in time. I just don't think that Texas has done a very good job of setting him up for success. And now I think that the growth is going to have to come in more of a rushed format. These first 3 games should have been about getting some experience under center, easing into things and building his confidence. Now you've got games, you don't have a whole lot of clock left for him to really get his confidence back before you play a big SEC game. I will say this before we leave, because it's not a podcast if I don't mention something about the Georgia Bulldogs, but I don't know if you saw any of that game, but that Gunnar Stockton does throw a nice ball.
He's looked better. Of course he lost the job, right? He wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, and then all of a sudden they decided, okay, he is. And I was surprised by that. But yeah, I think he's okay. To me, he's kind of a typical Georgia kind of quarterback. They're good enough. They're not great, but they're good enough. And when you have that kind of defense that they have, then that's usually all you need. So
the throw on 4th down to tie the game was just that was an incredible ball, just a perfectly thrown ball. So
it was. Georgia's still, to me, Georgia's still the best team in the SEC. I can't believe I saw in the national rank, the AP poll came out and the LSU was 3. It's like there's no way to me that LSU is better than Georgia.
I think that Brian Kelly as much as I do.
I don't hate it. I don't hate anybody, Evan. Well, maybe I rethink that. Maybe a couple of people. But did you catch Brian Kelly's act in the press conference afterward?
Yeah, when he was, we won the game. What do you want?
Yeah, he's berating the reporters. This is what you people do, and it's like, man, when you're making millions of dollars like Brian Kelly is, and when you are just a guy that left Notre Dame, which probably, I don't like to talk about fits. To me, you just need to hire a coach who can win, right? But boy, does anybody seem a worse fit for LSU than Brian Kelly? I mean, that's, especially when you had Coach O there, right? I mean, that seems like that's an LSU coach, right? It is that kind of guy, but not Brian Kelly, who's just insufferable. I mean, I don't know if anybody likes him. He's really hard to like.
Insufferable. That's a good word. I don't hate him. He's just insufferable.
Yeah, he is that. All right. Speaking of insufferable, we're out of here. And so we hope to be back next week, and we'll talk about some more of this stuff. And we'll have a really good idea of where the Rangers are by next week. So
maybe we'll have it.
Maybe we'll have. Make sure you tune in for that. So from everybody here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.